You're listening to a Pubhouse Network podcast for developers by developers.
Hello and welcome to the Stack Podcast episode number 61, recorded on September 29th, 2022. I am your host, Kito Man, and I'm here with my co-host, not Ian Hlavitz, who may join us later, but Josh Juno and Daniel Inahosa. Hey, guys.
Hey there.
We are back again for another episode, and this time you'll have to listen to just us talk to ourselves as opposed to a cool guest. But, you know, I think Danno can be funny enough and Josh can be informative enough, so I think we should be in good hands. So what have you guys been up to? Danno, what have you been up to?
I got a Spark class next week, so I think one of my picks that I had a few weeks ago was Gitpod, and still totally loving Gitpod. So if you don't remember, I think I covered this. That's why I was hesitant to put it in the picks. But you go to a Gitpod, or you go to a GitHub, or a what's the other one? Is it GitLab?
GitLab. Yeah.
And you go to a URL, then you put gitpod.io, and then what it does, it opens up a development environment for you. So, you know, let's say it's HTTPS github.com/KitoMan /awesome Java project or something like that. Well, you put your cursor right at the end of HTTPS:// and then type gitpod.io, and that takes you into a development environment. You'll authenticate OAuth with GitHub or whatever it is that you'd like, and then it will take you into a Visual Studio Code, and your project's there. Everything's already loaded. What's really cool about it, and I guess I might as well mention it again, since it's my intro, is it has SDK man. So it has Java, it has everything you need. It's fantastic, and loving it. I'm converting all of my classes to it lately. What I like about it, not that it's a problem, well, it is kind of a problem. It's kind of a problem with Java, and it's kind of a problem with Docker too. One time I had like sorry, just long intro. Sorry, Josh.
No worries. I'm taking notes because I want to look at this.
Right. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Anyway, so I'll do like a Java thing, and I had one thing. It was like, let's discuss what's new in Java, and I think this is around JDK 17. So I said, have JDK 17 ready, and you know, for the most part, people get prepared and put a JDK 17. Establishing a JDK on a machine is, I guess, hard for a lot of people. Like, it's really hard. Like the path thing, like we all take for granted because we've been burned by it. Way back in the 90s, I guess, when you know we're trying to, what is this class path, or how do I install Java? But installing Java is tough for people just getting into it, and I guess it's always been tough. And you know, every time I have a workshop, there one or two is just like, I don't have Java, or I didn't have Java 17. Will it still work with my JDK? No. So this Gitpod is great. Like, it's just like, there it is. Just type the following and we're all set. And let's get started with our project. Now, the other cool thing about Gitpod is once you go in, if you have a Docker Compose, you right click on Docker Compose and do a Compose services up, and it brings all those services up. So I have Docker containers all within in the same network. And so my Spark class, I have Spark Driver, Spark Worker, I have Kafka, I have Zookeeper, I have a bunch of other things. I think I have like 5 containers that are running, soon to be 6. And they all come up. Oh, and a Jupyter Notebook or Jupyter Notebook to do the data science stuff. So you have these Docker containers, and then you right click on it and you do an open browser, and it opens up on your browser. All your services are up and running. Amazing. Like, everything about it is just everything I've always ever wanted. So that's what I've been doing.
You know what?
Long intro.
Well, first of all, I think Spark is cool. Well, actually, I can't say I think Spark is cool because I never worked with it. but I think that's it's a cool tool. That's cool that you're teaching that course.
Yeah, big data. It's really just functional programming on large amounts of data separated out on other worker machines.
That makes sense.
The setup is tough, but once you have the setup going, then the rest is easy.
Gotcha. And what I was thinking about, especially like I know this is a sort of recent trend, is the whole Docker developer workspace thing. But given how much of a pain it is for onboarding new developers for existing projects, to me, I see that like the huge thing. Other than training, obvious win, because I have a couple clients where on one client, okay, first I had to get the laptop from the client, right? So I have a Windows machine next to my Mac. And then their client is like the people I'm really working with is actually another company. So then I have to, on the first company's machine, I have to get the VMware Horizon VDI client set up, and then remote desktop into the actual machine that I'm able to work with. It's on the right network and everything. And then I have to actually somehow figure out how to develop stuff and build, which I've actually been doing on the Windows machine, and then copying stuff over to the VM.
Is that nuts?
Yeah.
It's like just getting a development environment, even for seasoned developers, is just hard. Like,
it's time consuming. Yeah.
Yeah. You have your VPNs, and it's like, oh, I can't reach Maven Central. What do I need to do? Well, do you have a settings XML? Holy moly! By the time you get through all that, it's just terrible.
I don't know if they've solved the VPN issue, but if they can solve that on top of the developer workspace issue, then it's golden. And there's
and that's where my Gitpod.io. If you have internet, that's fine. We're done. Yeah, and no stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a thing called thread starvation, and I think we're doing that with Josh.
No, not starving. I'm learning.
That was brilliant.
I do have a question. About Gitpod, since you've been talking about it. What is your plan that you're using? I'm looking at the plans and pricing. Are you using free, or do you have
50 hours is a lot? So the free is 50 hours. So I have yet to take out my credit card. I suspect that day is coming soon. Very generous for what Gitpod has. It's one of those things that I have for free but if they say, if they ever shrink this down to like 30 hours afterwards, you have to pay for it. And then I have to pay for it. Absolutely. Because that's still cheaper than running like Kubernetes.
Even the personal plan is $100 hours a month, and it's only $9. So
it's really cheap. Wow.
That's right. And then it's 9 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I'm looking, the self-hosted version, that's what my clients is. Yeah,
because that one would be great. Like if you're locked in and you wanted to do a self-hosted version, deploy that on Kubernetes or whatever, you need internal, and everyone just sign on to a station or a session like that. Boom. And then the other great thing about Gitpod that I haven't tried yet, but you can run it on a Visual Studio Code or an IntelliJ on your local machine.
I noticed that.
So everything that you run on your IDE is actually running on the cloud. Now I got to tell you, doing a Docker Compose and it's downloading all the Docker stuff super fast, better than your home local machine, because I think it's closer to the backbone.
Nice.
And you notice, and actually I'm looking the self-hosted one. There's actually a free self-hosted one, which is pretty awesome.
I think so. I think they give you everything, so you just run it within your system.
Yeah.
Now you're going to pay because you have to manage it yourself, of course, on premise or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's only necessary if you've got a closed environment to begin with.
You're on your own. Yeah.
So I'm putting a Gitpod in the show notes. Of course, you can get to it just by going to gitpod.io.
Right.
But awesome. Okay, so your thread starvation is over, Josh. You can.
Yeah, your thread starvation.
That does it. It was good talking to you, folks. Have a good one. I'm joking. No, yeah, that was great. Thank you. And for me, I've not been up to anything as exciting, I don't believe. I've just been doing my normal day-to-day application development. And I did do something very fun recently, though. I did attend jdev.conf, which is in Chicago at UIC, Doran Forum, and it was great. It was good it was my first in person since COVID. So very, very nice to see everyone, from the community. I couldn't believe the number of people that were there. It was, just a good time. Great sessions, good food, good community. And so I did, worry a little bit about the COVID stuff, but right now in the area where JConf, was held, everything is green, so low community level. So that was good. So no problems there. And, other than the conference, and like I said, normal everyday stuff, but now the kids have been doing soccer. And so that's been lots of soccer games.
Good.
Good stuff.
How many kids do you have in soccer, Josh?
Well, right now I've got 3 in soccer.
Oh, that is a lot of games.
Yeah.
It is.
Nice.
It is. It's fun.
Yeah,
I still don't know all the rules, but
yeah.
Me neither.
There's a wonderful Twitter joke where it's 0.93 euro is equal to $1. And so they have like the currency, and someone on Twitter mentioned it's called soccer now. And I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. So speaking of soccer, I have been going to soccer games as well, but I only have one child in soccer, so I haven't been as busy as you. So other than that, what
would happen if America became a soccer powerhouse? All these parents are just getting their kids in it, and
I know
soon enough we're just going to have 10 years, about 10 years dominance. Yeah, just sheer dominance in it.
My brother lives in Europe, or at least he did. So recently, I remember he's the one that actually lives.
Yeah.
But he was a huge football or soccer fan. And his big plan, since my daughter plays soccer, is for his daughter to play soccer, for them both to be in a World Cup. That's his big plan. Of course, I don't really see that drive in my daughter, but his is only I think she'll be 4, so she hasn't gotten quite to the level of knowing whether or not she's interested. But he keeps on saying that's his big plan, so we'll see what happens.
Nice.
Speaking of
women's soccer with a bunch of mans, that'd be great.
One real quick thing, since we're on the soccer thing, I know this is not related to code. Wrexham, Wrexham. If you take a look at that is a soccer club that Ryan Reynolds and another gentleman that's on movies and TV have purchased this team, and they have a show, and it is all about soccer, and it is hilarious, and you should watch it.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I think he announced Deadpool is coming on again, I guess, or something like that too.
Oh yeah. I didn't know that.
Oh, that would be
nice.
Cool. I'm adding that to your picks list, Josh. That's
okay. Sorry, it's a little out of order.
It's all
no problem.
Okay, there we go. All right, cool. All right, yeah.
Just put the word. Just put JS at the end, and then now it's technical. We're discussing soccer JS.
Yes. I'm sure that is a library. I saw a tweet from Cameron Purdy. If you guys know him, he's
from Oracle Sun Microsystems.
Yeah, and he built that or worked on that coherence. I don't know, how would you clustering cache engine? Anyways, he came up with a new language recently. I forgot what it's called, but his tweet said, "I just came up with a language called Cat, and it's so popular it's been used for the last 30 years. And it's really just Cat, the command line, but it was really funny. It makes it really easy to write a Hello World program."
He wrote Cat?
No, he didn't.
Oh, okay.
He was just making a joke.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, I was gonna say, other than personal stuff, we are wrapping up some projects, which is great. We got a mobile app out, which is fun, going through the whole Android, iOS approval processes and all that kind of fun stuff. And the app is out actually using Capacitor, I mentioned before, which is sort of the new version of Cordova, which lets you wrap a web app and deploy it natively. And so that was pretty fun. Also, because the way Capacitor works is you still have to work with the native IDEs like Xcode and Android Studio. So I got to play with that kind of stuff a bit. Other than that, I've been working on a side project, which I'll talk about a little bit later. That's been a lot of fun. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I spoke at JCon, not jconf.dev, but JCon Online.
Nice.
This month as well. I did some sessions there. There's one I want to talk about later on. So that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
So that's about it for me.
All right.
Been busy.
Yep. You know how it goes. It's now fall, so I guess we have to work a little more now, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a few topics to discuss today. First up is controversy, and I think this is a Danno item. So Danno, take it away.
Yeah. So, and this is more general, not because I know Akka, and I just wanted to talk about Akka. In fact, it has nothing to do with it, because there are some others that are doing this in one form or another. But Lightbend changed their license for Akka from open source to closed source. And I don't know if it's like closed source, but I think kind of a semi open source. So new license is called a business source license, V11. Additional usage to grant to cover some open source uses of Akka, such as part of the Play framework. So that's kind of like an odd in. Like if you use Play framework, then you're all good to go. A BSL was created and has been adopted by MariaDB, Cockroach Lab, Sentry, Materialize, and others. It's a source available license that freely allows using the code for development and non-production work, such as testing. Production use of software requires a commercial license from Lightbend. Commercial license will be available at no charge for early stage companies. And here's the catcher: less than 25 million in annual revenue. By enabling early stage companies to use Akka in production for free, we hope to continue to foster innovation synonymous with the startup adoption of Akka. So that's their angle with it. And I don't know where I side with this, because I'm really a big proponent of open source, but they got to make cash too. And so I get where they're coming at. I mean, I think Disney is one of the biggest users of Akka, or even Comcast. I think those two are probably the biggest companies. And you work on this open source project, and the companies that are making billions of dollars off your software, and you're wondering like, where's my cut, yo? And so I kind of get, why there's this license. Confluent has something similar. Confluent, I don't know what their license is. Confluent open source license is what I think they have. And they were just protected. I think, even though they said they didn't, I'm going to say they didn't. It's because AWS was offering their material, hey, we'll set up Kafka for you. Right. And they were like, no, we'll do that ourselves. You're not taking our money. And so I think, open source has this endpoint that at some point, these developers and these companies want to get paid for their work. So it's a tough call.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And after 3 years, the BSL, this new license, indefinitely reverts to an Apache 2.0 license, which is fascinating.
Is it for a particular version? I forgot what that was. Like if you use like an Akka certain version, then it's 3 years after that. Is I thought is what I saw.
I think
but
that's
I could be wrong.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it's interesting because and Docker had the same problem, right? They were just like, okay, how do we make money with this thing that everybody uses?
Right, and I think they've been doing excellent, by the way, ever since they did that, because I remember the Docker desktop was just broken all the time.
It was crap.
Now it's great. Now they've added like so much other things.
Every time I use it, I'm like, hey, maybe I should check out that feature. Maybe I should do that. Like,
yeah, they've got a lot of great things going on there.
Yeah, and I don't think I registered so that I could actually use it, but I don't think I'm paying. But I would, if there's a need for me to pay for it for whatever I'm using, I'd be happy to do it. And I know there's alternatives to Docker that people like, but I haven't had a strong need to use an alternative at this point. So
right.
I think if the way that they're doing it makes sense, if you're going to just suddenly change the licensing and start to charge for your product, at least the way that they're doing it is you have to be at a certain threshold of revenue before you begin to get charged.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. And I certainly agree with your philosophy there, Danno, with, Disney and other companies making so much on the product. You may as well be getting a portion of that to help support, because that's just going to make the product even better, right? Because then you'll have more revenue to put into your product, in this case, Akka, and hopefully make that even better for Disney and whoever else is already paying into it then.
Yeah.
Right. Yep,
and it's I think it's a hard problem because some of these tools we rely on are pretty like extreme pieces of engineering. Akka's not trivial, right? It's not, and a lot of effort has been put into them, and especially once they get to the point where they have companies working on, enterprise support and adding enterprise features and stuff like that. I think companies still have this sort of knee-jerk reaction to paying for open source stuff. They're like, they'll pay for people because they have to, but then when it comes to getting support for something, they generally don't want to do it. Now I will say that that's not completely true because what a lot of people know, my company Virtua resells Prime product support, like Prime Faces, Prime NG, Prime whatever. Really I see people buying support for that stuff. That stuff is pure open source. The revenue model is support, and there's a couple commercial products now. But
right, and I think that's related because if you're small to moderate companies, it's worth your while to buy that support, which I think is a Red Hat model, but I don't know how long that's going to last. So Red Hat's revenue comes from support and training. I think MongoDB as well, like support and training. So a lot of open source is very successful like that.
Yeah.
But in the case of Akka, they have in-house. They have large, very well knowledgeable people in-house. So Disney has, Disney streaming. Comcast has its own huge IT department. They don't need to rely on anyone else for training. They don't need to rely on anyone else for support because they know what they're doing. So there's no cash coming in from that channel. So that's why Red Hat was successful with that, but Akka isn't because the ones that are using it can already fend for themselves.
And maybe it has something to do with how specialized the technology is, right? Because if it's Linux as an operating system, you want support in case there's patches that you need or whatever.
Sure.
But for Akka, it's like not something everybody knows, and you kind of have to, if you're really doing it at a hardcore level, you kind of have to have people in the house anyways.
Right.
So that's interesting. Yeah, I think, and I think your question, like how long will Red Hat, be doing well is interesting because they also spend a lot of money on R&D, more than I would expect.
Sure.
I mean, not that I know how much they spend, but I see the output of their RD.
Right.
So, yeah,
It's kind of interesting. I put in the show notes there the GitHub pull request for changing the license, and you can see lots of feedback there. Generally, it doesn't seem like this pull request has received a lot of support, of course, from the community.
Yeah, I don't know what to think. I don't know if it's because I'm older or I understand like the motivation why they did this.
Yeah,
I get that like people are upset that this is no longer open source, but they got to fend for themselves, and it's better.
Yeah.
It's better that they do something like this and stay afloat and use the technology and like Kito said, produce updates and produce things and continue to have that technology. Otherwise, that technology is dead and it's no use to anyone anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and Oracle had came under a lot of fire from everybody too by trying to have licenses for Java that they actually make money from. And at the end of the day, they still have to. You have a product.
I don't know. Yeah, that one was odd.
Well, okay, maybe it's the way that it happened, but I'm just talking about the need.
I know. Yeah.
The need to pay for people's salaries and that kind of stuff.
They kind of made it too quixotic, just to like, what are your intentions, and just like, what does that mean? And just like, they didn't handle that one particularly well.
No, but I think that's just because they weren't really used to being an open source company. They really didn't know what to do with it. So I had one more train of thought, but I forgot what it was. So anyway, I guess we should move on. All right, so we got a few server-side Java topics. I want to talk a little bit about one of the talks I did at JCon. I did three. I did one on getting things done, which if you listen to this podcast, it's one of my favorite topics. It's just a productivity methodology. I did a talk about GraphQL, which I'm pretty fond of. But I did a new talk, which is about GraalVM and Lambdas, AWS Lambdas. And I've been wanting to do this for a while because a couple of years ago, I was, at an organization and we were, we had Java for a lot of stuff, but we also were doing some Lambdas. And I mentioned, hey, we should look at doing GraalVM for Java for Lambdas. And I was told, hey, this is like that's like a science project. And because everyone was like, oh no, cold startup time. Because when we had Lambdas, I think most of our Lambdas were in Python or TypeScript, I think. So I was like, all right, well, and especially now, with all these frameworks like Micronaut and Quarkus, et cetera, taking advantage of the native and also Spring Native now doing the same thing. But what I wanted to do is just take basically a Hello World Lambda and then deploy a Java version, pure Java version, and a Graal version and see what the difference was. So that's what the presentation was about. And it was really interesting. It was a lot of fun to also work with the AWS CDK. I'm not sure what the C part stands for. Cloud.
You said CDK? Oh, yeah. That's right.
Cloud. I'm like, yes. The CDK sounds like component development kit, but yeah, the cloud development kit, which basically is just bindings for every language to do AWS deployments and everything. It's really nice, highly recommended. But it basically, I was just wondering what you guys have. I know you've played with GraalVM. I think both of you have, right? If I remember correctly.
What's that? Say it again.
I said I think you've both played with GraalVM some, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Yep. Love it. Love it to a point.
To a point. Well, it's interesting because to me, it's like now that I've actually gone through the process a little bit. There's, obviously it's faster startup times and the performance in general. But what's interesting is the trade-off in terms of getting an actual binary out. It seems like it could become a pain in the butt depending on, libraries you're using and everything, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I've not used it to that extent. I've just done tinkering with it at this point. and I liked it. But my main issue with it is that I tinker with it, and then I go away for a few weeks or a couple of months even sometimes, and then I come back to use it again, and it doesn't work, and I have to reset it up. That was my main issue.
Changing the way it works. Yeah.
Yeah. That was my main issue with it, but I did like it for the little I used it.
Right.
I think that makes sense because when I was working out the presentation, I went through the demos for the presentation. I went through, examples, right, to make sure I knew what I was doing, right. And half of them were like out of date, and they weren't that old. Like they were like maybe 8 months, 9 months, a year old.
It's changing so fast that the material's out of date within a couple of months,
Yeah. So. Danno, what were you saying?
Yeah. No, just to concur with what Josh said. I think GraalVM brings a lot of people in with the native image. I mean, that's their gold there. But I don't know, like they don't seem to embrace, and maybe I'm wrong, but the backwards compatibility thing. Like if something works, just keep it working. Don't change the way you go about it. And that, to me, that's frustrating as well. Plus they have all the different kinds of components, which I like, but they're all developed either really well or not so well. So, for example, the native compilation works particularly well. The Ruby and JavaScript, I think, worked particularly well with that interpretive layer that they had or that they have. So I think I like that part. But let's say like the Python, that's kind of like underdeveloped. And so it's a big project, which a lot of it is also underdeveloped. And so, I don't know what to think about it. It's like the potential's there, but, get some more people, put some more effort into it. Because, if you're going to say that all these facets are awesome and they should, make them work and, put that effort into it.
Right. Last I looked at it, the Python support was it's like an old version of Python. It's only like partially supported.
Something like that. Yeah.
I
don't know what it is now. So maybe, what's that?
3? Is there support for Python 3 yet, or is it still 2.6, 2.7?
Last I saw it was
no.
Let's see, GraalVM.
Yeah, GraalVM Python. Because there was a big world out there for machine learning and stuff like that.
I know.
Within GraalVM.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the enterprise thing. Yeah, I don't know. The thing that really chefs my hide is well, if you get the enterprise, it's faster. I'm like, you took away speed? Like I have the potential of running really well and you like slowed it down for some reason because I'm using the free version. Oh yeah, that one just like, I don't know if they still do that or not, but they were like, yeah, pay for it and we'll give you a faster version. Just give me the fast version right now. Do you
think that they're putting in some thread.sleeps that they comment out for the professional version?
Thread sleep 5, just sprinkled everywhere.
If paid, then they comment that.
If paid, thread sleep 5.
Nice. Well, what was interesting is that the biggest thing with Graal is that you have to, since it doesn't support reflection, you have to basically say, okay, these are the methods. Basically,
right. Everything has to be known. Yeah, that's
right. And because of that, like all the dependency injection stuff we're used to requires more effort up front. And so while I was looking at all this stuff, I ran across this dependency injection framework called Dagger. And I mentioned it to Bucky Schultz. He's like, that's been around for like 10 years, dude. And
come on, Kito, that's hilarious.
And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I missed it, but I'm intrigued because it's a fully static compiled time dependency injection framework for Java, Kotlin, and Android. And it's an attachment of an earlier version created by Square, which kind of screams Bob Lee at me, but and now maintained by Google. So I was kind of intrigued by this. I've never used it. I have no idea how good it is, but I noticed it uses the @inject annotations. The
Interesting.
JS3, I think it was.
Wow.
So that was kind of neat. So yeah,
Bob Lee did Juice. So
he did Juice.
What's
but
the difference?
He worked at Square for a while. I have no idea if he did that when this came out or anything. I just noticed that.
I love Juice.
Yeah.
I'm like the antithesis of like every Java developer, or I think all of us share that same commonality, I guess. None of us are Spring people. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Out of the whole world, the three of us are together on the same podcast, and we probably know Spring, but we don't do Spring.
I mean, I will say on one of my projects, we did Spring Boot app. But it was one of those situations where the subcontractor working with me was like, well, we need to build a microservice. It was pretty simple. The client wasn't very sophisticated in terms of like having like a real infrastructure to run it on, or like, hey, just run the jar. It's like, okay.
That's right.
But regardless,
I love that. What's wrong with you? Just run the jar. That's right.
But the point is that there was no code sharing with anything else, and we needed to get it done pretty quickly. And the contractor knew of Spring Boot, so I'm like, yeah, just doing Spring Boot.
Yeah.
So I have played with it a little bit, but I did a lot more Spring back in the day than I do now. So.
I have nothing against Spring. I think it's a pretty nice, they've got some nice stuff, and you can get up and running quickly. Spring Boot, especially, it's a nice framework. I just prefer Jakarta EE because I've used it for years and know it. And so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in exactly the same boat. So, So while we're on that topic, though, I did want to talk a little bit about Quarkus because we're using it on this new project because I wanted to try one of these newer microservices frameworks, and I wanted to just do something that supported Eclipse microprofile. So Quarkus is actually, and we haven't gotten too deep into it yet. But so far, I mean, I've used it in demos, I've played with it, but this is the first time I've actually using it like wholesale to build something. So far, we've been pretty happy with it. It's and actually one of the most impressive things is just the guides. Like they've actually got a lot of guides for doing lots of different things.
That's great. I actually like Quarkus a lot. It's really great.
Yeah. So I've been really impressed with it so far. So we'll see how it goes. But we're using it with microprofile GraphQL and JPA, and we're actually trying out the reactive JPA APIs or the reactive Hibernate. I don't think they're actually part of JPA. But just to see how those work out. So, but yeah, it's been pretty cool so far. So,
do you think it's quite easy to get up and running quickly with Quarkus, given the guides? And also, now that you've been using it for a while, do you find that you're more productive with it, or is it something that? Yeah.
Yes. And so SDK Man has like a Quarkus runner. So I think if you do SDK list Quarkus, you get the runner there. And so then you're off to the races. I think you do Quarkus new and whatever name of the project is, creates a folder, everything that you need, and then you're good to go. And then, but yeah, folder structure is great. I think they learned a lot from Spring Boot as well. So credit where credit is due. So very similar in organization. You create your web inside of your source main resources. So all your assets, all your web assets are there in case you want to put them there. But getting a REST API, I think you'll like that, Josh, is the way they do that is, I believe they used, what's that API, JSR?
JaxRS.
The JaxRS, yeah, they have the JaxRS annotations. And yeah, so I think you would feel, particularly yourself there, Josh, I think you'd feel right at home.
Nice. Yeah, of course, since it's micro profile, it has CDI and all that kind of stuff in it. So
yeah, I use I like the metrics packages as well. So they have a package that you can use with Prometheus. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Prometheus.
Yep.
Yeah.
As an aggregator. Yeah. So it has the metrics. You just point your service router onto look at your microservice, and yeah, you get all the metrics from within your microservice. So all good to go.
Sounds nice.
Yeah.
I'll definitely have to take a look at it for newer projects that come along.
Right. And it has the GraalVM, of course, built into it.
Yeah.
So you just have a native image. And so it's like a C-based application. It's really fast.
The startup project just makes it really easy also just to create a Docker image and everything. It's really nice. And I like the developer experience. This has been great for demos. You just make it change automatically and it rebuilds and incrementally and you're good to go.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, because you just do, what is it? NVN Quarkus :dev.
Yeah.
And it's just running. You make a little change and it's there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Didn't know the podcast was going to make this turn here. Yeah, good stuff.
Are you saying it's not normally good stuff, Danno?
No. I was just surprised we went down that road. Yeah. So. And the reason I said good stuff is because I kind of been ignoring it for better part of this year. And so now I'm just like, I need to take a look at Quarkus again. I did it in January and because I needed something really quick for backend.
Right.
And I don't know Spring too well, so I decided to just do Quarkus. And I remember being impressed back then, but it's not something I continue on.
Right. Cool.
Let's put another one on there real quick. Has anybody done a comparison between Quarkus and Helidon?
No, like Helidon is next on my list probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that as well.
That website looks nice and clear too, just like absolutely great. Just
I know, like
get to it.
And it looks great, and I haven't heard anyone say anything bad about it, which is always good. I heard, so I think that was probably number 2 on my list to play with.
Right. And you were mentioning React, Kito, and I think about like JavaScript frameworks versus Java frameworks. And you could, I don't know, just a strange opinion on my part, you could tell the maturity of Java frameworks. We've been at this rodeo for like decades now. And so I think we know how to build frameworks and make developers happy. And JavaScript frameworks, I think, are getting there, but they've been kind of clumsy for the last few years. And I think React was one of them because I was like, how do you do like this base path sort of thing? Because your URL is different likely when you deploy this. And they were like, well, I'm going through all the documentation. Well, then you would need this React - other blah, blah, blah. And then you need to bring this in. And then maybe you just needed to have this little widget here, just like, yikes. No, is there is this part of the framework? Just make it that. But
it seems. Oh, go ahead, Kito.
Go ahead, Josh.
I just was going to mention, it seems like lots of the JavaScript frameworks that have been around for a long time have gone through some major reorgs with their code in the past few years. Yeah. Probably because they're now figuring out this, how to organize it better.
Yeah.
And then usually it's not backward compatible. Like I think Dojo was one, some of these other libraries and I use ArcGIS JavaScript, and some of that stuff has totally changed over the past couple of years.
Right. And JavaScript, a lot of JavaScript developers, I know Angular, it's not called Angular JS anymore, it's just called Angular. And they were like, you know what? We're all TypeScript now. And so even just the language and the preference that people are moving to TypeScript, kind of interesting.
And it's interesting to me too, because I'm much more, it's funny, after being someone that's been so into, Java frameworks for so long, I'm kind of anti-framework for front end. So I actually don't, I happily work on Angular projects and React projects. So if you hire me, don't get me wrong. But when I can pick, I generally just go with like lit and web components and avoid any big frameworks. But what's interesting is, just going down that route, you end up with, which we're doing on this project, you end up with issues where you, like the whole lit modern web preference. There's a website called Modern Web. You can check it out. I'll put it in the show notes. But the idea is to use more of the native browser features, because there's so much stuff built into the browser that you don't need frameworks for a lot of stuff, because it's just such a rich, set of APIs. frameworks are great for sort of gluing everything together, but a lot of the stuff is already there out of the box.
Right.
But when it comes to JavaScript modules, which are fairly new, for years there's been like different module systems like CommonJS or the other popular one, which I'm totally blanking on right now. And now there's ES modules, which are just JavaScript modules, which are native in the browser and also native in Node. But then you try and use, let's say you're using all the new stuff, and then you try to use some third-party library. They haven't bothered making a new ES module, and it's all like in CommonJS or another format. System.js, I think, was one. Then you can't really use it unless you find like one that's in the right module format. So they have this sort of module hell thing going on, which you can get around if you use a bundler like Webpack or Rollup or
See, that's a no-go for me because like the way you're even talking, well, this would work, but you got to have this and this and it sounds like you're making up libraries on the spot, and I know you're not. You'll need Sponge Bath, and you'll need like Sneaker Liner, and but then you'll all be set or whatever. Yeah.
Well, see, this is where the frameworks are actually useful. So I will say that. So like, if you are Angular and you just like follow all the default Angular stuff, everything kind of works. And the same thing is with React. If you pick with React, there's like I think many different ways you can build a React project, whereas with Angular, there's like one, it's like an Angular project, But I think if you pick a particular, like create React app or whatever, you kind of go with the way that it does things, you're kind of good to go. I think what I'm running into is what happens is kind of sort of why those levels of frameworks exist, the levels that take away the integration aspect. And that's kind of a pain. But honestly, if you just use a bundler, you're good to go. It's just that I was trying not to.
Right.
Anyways, this is a long tangent, but it's an interesting thing. It really is sort of like, I think a module hell is a good way to think of it. It's it's an interesting way to look at things. So.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Josh, want to talk about Jakarta EE 10?
Yeah, so big news is that Jakarta EE 10 is now available. It was released on the 22nd. And there are lots of big improvements in this release. And the biggest news is that this is the first release actually to move the specifications forward, including new enhancements and features since Java EE 8, really, right? Because Java EE 8, introduced lots of new features to the Java EE realm, and then we went to Jakarta EE 8, and that was just clearly an open source version of Java EE. And then we went to Jakarta EE 9, which involved the namespace change. Now we have Jakarta EE 10, which actually is adding new features. So, and with these new features, Kito and Danno, anything real interesting to you that jumps out? I can tell you the first thing that jumps out to me that makes it seem like this is really moving the platform forward is that now there's an asynchronous annotation in CDI meant to replace the EJB async annotation. So looking to phase out EJB, I think, in the future.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I love EJB.
It's really nice to see that slowly happening, but to see
that. Indeed.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Does the asynchronous boundary transfer over, and maybe they already have, like if I have like a JSF component, and is that asynchrony starting from the web and goes all the way back to the app server and comes back? Like, can you make that like an entire loop sort of thing?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
That's a good question for the experts, but I don't know exactly what went into this asynchronous implementation for CDI, so I can't answer that completely. But
yeah, I have that in, I do Play Framework now as my web go-to, and we have like everything as a future, and I think that's probably what they're doing. So that future, that I have this particular action, it's already on an async boundary. So when I go to the database and come back up, for that entire request response, that's in its own asynchronous thread that's processing things.
Got it.
I think it is. I mean, I would be surprised if it isn't, but
I would suspect that it would be totally compatible. It's just that then it's your job to make sure the client is notified when it completes.
Exactly. You have to have
that's a hard part.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Josh, I don't have any specific new features that I have that I'm aware of off the top of my head that excited me. But I was just glad to see some. Basically, I see it as a set of minor tweaks and enhancements, and some of which are seemingly minor but major, like what you're talking about.
Yep.
But to me, it's just great to have it moving forward.
Yeah, no doubt. And probably another one you can look up, and so I'm not going to mention and ramble everything off. But one of the other main things is if you ever use JaxRS or Jakarta REST, and you have some sort of multi-part form data you'd like to open up to a REST API, you weren't able to do it without jumping through some major hoops back in the JaxRS days. But now they've added that to REST as well. So that's quite a nice.
That's a big deal because I've dealt with just proprietary extensions to make that possible.
Yeah.
And Quarkus has that built in, I believe, as well.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Competition for everyone.
Oh, yeah. Of course. And the other thing that's great is we can use JDK 11 or JDK 17.
That is a big one.
Yes.
That is huge. Absolutely. Because we're at 19. We should probably have put that in the announcement. So March, I guess it's March and October. Is that right? Or March and September?
For the releases?
Release?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah. So next March, Java 20.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And that means we're a year away from the next LTS, which is going to be 21, right?
Yeah.
Java will be drinking age. Look at that.
Hey, that's right. I wanted. There's got to be some good Dukes for that. Some good logos.
That's right, Duke. Duke on the floor.
Right.
Duke overdoing it. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Duke, I just I have a suspicion. I forgot what those things are called, but you've seen a Ouija board, right?
Yeah.
What's that thing called? My partner told me.
Thing that moves around on the Ouija?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Huh?
I have no idea.
I can't remember.
It's called a planchette. That's what it's called, a planchette. Okay. Take a look at a Ouija. So do a Google on Ouija board planchette, PLANCHETTE. And just go to Google Images and just do a Ouija board planchette, and you'll see Java Duke. Anyway, that's my conspiracy theory, everybody.
Yeah. And I think if on that same note, Duke was originally supposed to be a mouse pointer. Is that correct? That's what I tell people.
Interesting.
Because I think that's a good piece of
trivia. That ruins my conspiracy theory, by the way.
I think it was originally.
I was trying to introduce some occult reasoning behind it.
I could be wrong, though, because maybe this is it. That's what you're making me think of. I don't know.
Yeah. So, sure. I think we should start sharing screen since we have 5 people watching us on YouTube. So,
we're live, huh? Yeah, there we go. So here it is. Welcome everybody.
Oh, look, Mr.
Yeah, so we're welcome to the Stack D Conspiracy Podcast. And so look at that quarter sun one right there. That's Java Duke right there. Just draw a line through it, and you have that one right there. It's perfect Java Duke.
That really
just paint the bottom part white, paint the top part black.
That is.
And put some hands in it and draw a line through it, and you have Java Duke.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We're going to have to get Josh Gates from Expedition Unknown on here in some future podcasts just to kind of break this conspiracy theory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what? I need that hair like that spokesperson on the History Channel about ancient aliens. And just like, hey man, have you seen a Ouija board planchette lately?
You have to wonder.
Duke, man.
You have to wonder.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. All right. While we're on that note, so Josh, I think you have here Payara 6.
That's correct.
7 are supporting Jakarta EE 10.
Yeah, as well as so Payara 6 is in alpha still, as you listen to this probably. And I talked to the folks from Payara yesterday, and they said they're looking to release it early next year. So you can use the alphas now and get started. But Glassfish 7, which I don't know if I would recommend going into production with Glassfish, but maybe that is out now and you can use it. There is a WildFly version, which is also available now. And I believe OpenLiberty also has a Jakarta EE 10 implementation. So there are options moving forward. And the best thing to do would be go out and start to play with it and get used to it. And if you're already on Jakarta EE 9, should be an easy move because of namespace change is already taken effect. But if you're still on Jakarta EE 8 or before, you'll have to make that namespace jump.
Yep. All right, cool. All right, next topic is NetBeans 15, which would be a Josh thing, because Josh is the NetBeans fan.
Yes, so I just wanted to make a quick shout out for NetBeans 15. It's out now, available. Too many changes to go forward with and mention all of them on this. But I can tell you that from my standpoint, it looks like NetBeans is definitely moving forward nicely. Good. The editor is nice and slick and easy to use and got lots of updates to it. And, no matter which tech you're using with Java or, even C or something else, most likely there's an enhancement made in NetBeans 15. And on the Jakarta EE side, there were quite a few enhancements made for this release. So you should go check it out.
I should play with that sometime because, these days I don't try a lot of different IDEs. I'm pretty much stuck with IntelliJ because I love it. I dabble in VS Code depending on the project. And I love a lot of VS Code, but I seem to always come back to IntelliJ. And I've actually, on some projects, I've been using Eclipse lately and been very unimpressed since it's the same as it was like 10 years ago. So I should play with NetBeans to see what it's like these days.
Yeah, one of my favorite, probably the less techy features that's my favorite about NetBeans is that they use there's a newer look and feel within the last release or two that is a lot like IntelliJ. It's a lot like it and darker mode, and it's really impressive, and I can use it all day and it doesn't hurt my eyes. And so
why are you doing you're not a young man, why are you using dark mode?
Hey, I use dark mode.
Dark mode's great.
What is going on? None of you are like in your 20s, people. Like, move on. Like, you're old. You need a bigger font and stop using dark mode.
Dude, I have a gaming keyboard. Even though I don't game.
That's because
I have a gaming monitor. Gaming monitors are some of the best monitors.
The refresh rate.
Yeah. So, I like dark mode. It's my preference. The only time I turn it off is when I'm actually in sunlight, and then I'm like, this is useless. I can't see my screen.
Yeah.
Interesting. Light mode. But I think it's great. Now I do leave some things in the normal mode, but
you know what? There's an interesting thing that I'm comfortable doing now. I've always been kind of comfortable with saying no, but I like saying no and just leaving it at that. A couple of things have happened, like while I was doing Zoom trainings. One time I had my ceiling fan on, and they were like, "Can you turn your ceiling fan off?" No. I just left it at that because it was like August, man. I was hot and it was like humid, and I was like, no. And then someone else mentioned, like, this was during a class, can you use dark mode? I'm like, no. And it's just like, I don't know, like, having people change your mode is like, it's like an to me, it's an odd request.
Yeah.
I was in one session, I think it was a tutorial for JCon. It was about MicroStream, which is like a Java persistence.
Oh, sure.
But basically you have all of your objects in memory, basically, and it gives you like a nice interface for traversing the graph and everything.
Right.
Anyways, the guy's doing his demo and someone's like, and I think he was using Eclipse, and they're like, can you use IntelliJ? And I'm like,
no, come on. No.
And the guy was really polite about it. He was just like, no, I'm not using IntelliJ right now, but I'm using Eclipse. And I'm like, why? What is he going to do? Like turn off, like load up the entire project and
excuse me, you're using Windows. Can you change to Linux, preferably a Arch Linux? There's some things you can't change, man. What the?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. Now, maybe I misunderstood, and he just wondered if the guy knew how to use IntelliJ or something. But.
Yeah, it should be easy enough to load up if you're using Maven or Gradle to load up the project in the other IDE, but to actually get it up and running, it takes some work, to get everything going.
Yeah, what if you haven't used it? Like, you wouldn't have any idea what to do. I mean,
Oh my gosh. Well, I slipped in a bullet point here for JDK 19, which I think we talked about, but that has been released as well. I like the virtual threads, so virtual threads has come out. So
Project
your threads, Project Loom, halfway. So Project Loom was actually the virtual threads and structured concurrency, but they kept the structured concurrency in the incubator. So what that means, whether you like it or not, people, JDK modules, you got to use them. They're here. So in order to turn that on, you kind of have to set up a module info.java and say that you're wanting to use the JDK incubator module. Yeah. So that's not quite fully, I mean, it is, but virtual threads is out. So virtual threads, for those that don't know, it is a thread that is stored on the JVM stack. And that also means that every stack that the thread has is actually in the JVM. So one of the things that was happening was if you used up a thread, that's why you had to do a thread dump so you could see what happened during that thread. And because that stack just went away because the thread had to go do some other job. Well, now one of the great things about a virtual thread is that you can just like take a look at a bunch of threads as they're done. And all that's managed within the JVM, and it's hyper fast, super duper 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 fast, a lot faster than the Java Lang thread. And so I think that one's going to be a really big deal. Can't wait for that.
Just wanted to jump on that real quick. I saw at jconf.dev, I think it was Jose Puginard, who from Oracle
or something like that.
Yeah, he did an excellent presentation on Loom, and he was showing thread and how how slow it was. It was actually fast, but he was showing with lots of iterations how slow it could be. And then he said that if you had 1 million threads, how long would that take? And that there was something odd like 25 hours to boot this whole, this application up. And then he brought up 1 million threads like that with Loom. And he said it's actually impossible to bring up 1 million threads using the old model. And now you can bring it up in a matter of just a second,
Yeah. And so we always have to do like this kind of gymnastics to avoid blocking as well. Like blocking you can avoid. If you're doing server sockets, you're going to be blocking. If you do a thread sleep, of course, you're going to be doing blocking. But blocking happens. And so the idea behind Loom is just like program however you want. Program in the old C style if you want. If it blocks, we take care of it. You don't worry about it. Exactly. So it changes the way that you program things. So I think that's going to be very important as well.
Game changer.
It's going to
absolutely.
It's the minute we start seeing this get into the runtimes that we use, whether it's whatever Spring Boot or any macro profile implementation or Jakarta EE, like when we start seeing this get into those frameworks, it's going to be like pretty amazing the throughput improvements we'll see.
Right. Yeah.
Which is very nice.
Yep. And record patterns are a preview now as well. So that's going to be really great. So that's one of the things that, if you're stuck in 19, I think 17 started with records. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it came out of preview in 17.
Yeah. So records are great. No more like getters and setters. We're moving away from we're moving away from mutability and heading towards immutability. You could just create a one-liner, public record, name of the file, like team, and just stipulate the attributes all in one line. That's it. And you could have it like embedded in a method. So it doesn't need to have that correspondence of one record with one file name either.
Yeah. Yep. Record patterns, that's more about like within like a switch statement, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're bringing back the switch statement. Yeah. And they also have a vector API, which I suspect this is for computations that would likely be really good for machine learning, I think.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And so, yeah, a lot of great things are coming out. So that's JDK 19.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm just happy to use 17 on something at this point.
Yeah.
But I'd love to. I need to play with some of that stuff. So, all right. So I wanted to. We're almost ready to wrap up, but and I know Josh, you got to leave in a few minutes. But I wanted to mention for the last, not the last few, but a few episodes ago, I've been teasing about a project I've been working on, my side project. And so I want to talk a little bit about what that is, so that anyone who's interested can check it out. So basically, one of the issues that I've been running into over the last several years as someone who speaks, not super frequently, but fairly frequently at conferences, is managing all that stuff. So I have a set of sessions that I have each year. I used to keep them in Evernote, and then I would actually, whenever I needed to submit to a conference, I would actually get my assistant to go and basically cut and paste from Evernote into the conference and stuff. Then after a while, I was like, I have all this crap in Evernote. Like, it seems like I should have an actual system to help me keep track of this stuff. Not that like it's really hard, but what I realized is I wanted to do more than just keep track of the session itself. Like the description of the session. Whether it's a tutorial or a birds of the feather. Whether it's live demos. The tags associated with it, whether it's like Java or, web components or Angular or whatever. So I was keeping track of all that stuff, but I also wanted to keep track of like all of the deliveries of it. So like, if I talked about that topic at a conference or on a user group or something, I wanted to keep track of where I gave the talk, and then, any artifacts related to it, like whether there are any videos or stuff related to each of those, because it's kind of hard to keep track of all that stuff. So that's what we're building. It's called SpeakerTrax. Hopefully, by the time you get this, by the time you hear this podcast, you'll be able to find it at SpeakerTrax.com. But basically, the idea is that you'll be able to, as someone who speaks at conferences, or user groups or sessions, who does a lot of speaking, even if it's just online videos, you can keep track of all that stuff and where you've given it. And then, I think we'll be able to do a lot from there. The initial site will be basically a sign-up page and my own beautiful profile. So of course, by keeping track of all your sessions, you also will be able to have like a profile that says like who you are and list your sessions. And what's nice about that is that like, down the road, I'll be able to say, if I want to submit at a conference, I would like to be able to say, okay, here's a link to my session that I want to submit, as opposed to having to cut and paste it everywhere. So that's actually what we've been building with Quarkus and Lit for web components on the front end. So I encourage you to check it out, SpeakerTrax.com. We'll see if it actually happens. Well, it will happen, but we'll see, if it becomes the cool app. I hope it will be.
Right.
And you should be able to sign up there.
Sounds nice. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see how it goes. At the very least, it's an interesting project, and I've been using it. So I figure at least you have someone, at least I'll eat my own dog food. So
sounds like it'd be really useful for sure. I can certainly see having an organizational tool like that, even if you only do a few talks a year, to keep everything together rather than on your file system or, in Evernote or whatever. Just have a tool dedicated to that, which will make it easier to then submit talks to other conferences. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so that's my spiel. So before you leave, Josh, why don't you do your pick?
So my main pick for the day was going to be a book I actually just found out about recently. It's a book. I'm not sure if you can see it with my background, but yeah. I am wearing a darker shirt, so you can see that. Yep. This book is called Practical Cloud Native Java Development with Microprofile. And this is a book using Microprofile 4.1 and is written by Emily Zhang, Andrew McWright, John Elkhorn, David Chan, and Alistair Nottingham. And I received this book when I was at jconf.dev. I was lucky enough to get a signed copy from Emily. So I'm going to cherish this one, and I'm going to read through it. And I think that Microprofile is a good target to get started with if you're interested in doing microservices, or even if you have existing microservices. That's probably something you may want to look into with all the different features in the Microprofile feature set. There's probably something you can use. So
cool. Yeah, I might check this out myself, because I think that this is sort of what you find with any technology. There's always so many different layers, right? So you may have used one part, but there's like 3 or 4 other parts you have never touched. So,
and if you're going to JavaOne this coming month, Emily will be there, and I believe she'll be doing a book signing there. So cool. You can look for her, and yeah. And thank you to Emily for signing the copy of the book.
Nice. Wonderful.
All right. So also, Josh, you'll be at JavaOne too, right?
Yes. We'll be at JavaOne next. It's October 17th, 18th, and we're doing a BOF on Jakarta EE and Microprofile.
Nice. Great. Nice.
Looking forward to seeing people there.
Yeah. So hopefully this will be out before JavaOne. If not, it'll just be a funny prologue. But
well, we all here. Are you going to be there as well, Daniel?
I was going to, and I think I had put in a few talks, but I didn't hear anything from it. But they gave me a comp pass. And so I don't know. My life tends to fill up very quickly in my calendar very quickly. So there was just this moment that I didn't hear back. So I just told some of my customers, "Hey, this week is open." So they took it up very quickly, and so
makes sense.
Even though I got a comp pass with like 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, "Yeah, thank you," but unfortunately, you'll give me comp passes like 2 months earlier, not 2 weeks earlier.
Yeah, makes sense. Understand.
Oh, well, we'll miss you, because I'll be there too. And I'll be talking about foundations of modern server-side Java.
That'll be
nice.
So, cool. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So it should be fun.
Nice.
All right, cool. So we've got some more picks, Josh. If I know you got to get going to a soccer game, but
hang out for another minute or two. Then I'm gonna have to say goodbye.
Okay,
I appreciate it.
All right, so Danno, what you got for us?
So the pictures behind us right now are from the James Webb Telescope. So Hubble was absolutely great when it was first launched. What was it, 80s or early 90s? And then, but since the late 90s, they've been working on the James Webb Telescope. Very complex telescope. And what you're seeing is some of our favorites. So we posted the website there. Behind me is the Jupiter up close. And then Kito's lab, that one's amazing. I was mentioning before the podcast that a lot of these galaxies look like space mold. Like mold that's just been growing in space. Yes. I'm like, maybe that's all who we are.
You hold this.
Man, what is up with this? What's up with this podcast? I'm like, Duke is really a planchette from a Ouija board, and like space is really just mold.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I don't remember which galaxies. These are some galaxies, but I don't remember which ones. But it looked cool.
Yeah, I don't know. But that's the thing. Like, if you take a look around, just even those 3, there are far more galaxies than we ever thought. And James Webb Telescope was just like Yeah, there's more. So
yeah, and
kind
what's
of interesting.
What's cool is if you go to that site in the show notes, you can compare different telescopes. Like there'll be the Webb telescope and the Hubble telescope next to each other, and it's like night and day. Like the colors are even different. Like
right, totally. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So Josh, do you remember which one yours was? Are you like a?
I can't remember which one it was, but it was cool. So kind of like a vortex, almost.
It looks like a black hole.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very detailed. I can't believe it's amazing the contrast and just the visibility you have of these objects that are so far away. Obviously with the telescope being so far away from us, they're still millions of miles away from this telescope, and it can get such great pictures. It's great.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. All right, so I had one pick, which was airmail. So this is much more boring, but so I use Gmail. I use it for personal and business stuff. Obviously, seems to be a lot of Outlook for clients for their mail systems, so I use a Gmail app on my phone, but it's all right. But the biggest problem with me with the Gmail app is that I cannot search labels, and I obsessively use labels, probably more than I should, but I do. And I can't search, I can't filter by labels. So if I want to apply a label to something in the Gmail app, I'm not going to scroll down because I have too many to scroll through. So I finally decided to find an app that'll let me search labels and actually give me a different perspective than Gmail. And I found one called Airmail. I got the iOS version. It does cost money. I think you can get like a little free trial, but it's like $2 a month or something. But it's worth it for me. And it's just a nice little mail app. You can obviously with Gmail, you can filter by labels, or you can filter labels if you're looking for a label, which was my main feature. But it's also a nice app, and it's got like all these different themes. It's like really, really customizable. You can also set up integrations with other apps like Dropbox and Evernote and stuff like that. It's just a nice little app, and it works not just with Gmail but also with other mail providers as well. So if you want to if you really use email a lot and you're willing to pay for an app, you should check out Airmail. So
great, excellent.
That's nice. Yeah. I am going to depart now before we get to the events. So thanks again for having me. It was great to speak, and take care.
Great, and enjoy the game. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. All right, so little bit of housekeeping. If you're listening to this podcast or watching it as part of the Pubhouse Network, which has some other podcasts, most notably the Off Heap podcast, which Josh also is a member of, where it's also sort of a news podcast, but more purely Java based, and also the Java Pubhouse, which is where they usually dive into a technical topic or two. So you should check those out. And also, there are some upcoming events. Some of these may have happened by the time this comes out, but I'll mention them anyways. So the first one we have is DevOps, which is always a wonderful conference. I can't remember. I think I decided not to submit this year because it was too close to JavaOne, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But it's October 10th through 14th in Antwerp, Belgium. But that is a great conference, and that's their first in-person one in a while, I think. So as we mentioned, JavaOne, October 17th through 20th, and that's in Las Vegas, Nevada in the US. Connect.tech is November 8th through 10th in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's more of a front-end conference and all things JavaScript. Java Summit IL, which is in Tel Aviv, Israel, on November 21st. The JakartaOne live stream, December 6th. The CFP is now open, as Josh mentioned, so you can check that one out. And SpringOne, December 6th through 8th. I believe the CFP is open still for that one as well. And why don't you take the next ones, Danno? Wake up.
All right. Yep, absolutely. Sorry, my phone was going. Which one did you finish with? SpringOne?
I finished with SpringOne, yes.
All right. Progressive. Oh, yeah, there we go. Now I know why you did it. Progressive web experience. And this will be long after the hurricane. So I think it'll be okay. December 4th through 7th, Clearwater, Florida. That's going to be all nearly web-based kind of material. Tech Leader Summit, so how to be an effective leader. That would be December 7th through 9th. Arts Comp, which has to do with architecture, big data, topics like that. That will be December 12th through 15th. Each of the three that I've just talked about are all a part of the No Fluff Just Stuff conference. So these are the major events that they have. And then the last two we have is J Champions Conf. This is done by speakers who are also Java champions. That's going to be January 2023. We're already heading into the new year. And then the Great Dev Nexus 2023 will be April 4th through 6th, 2023. If you're interested on the CFP, DevNexus CFP is open. For Java champions, that CFP is open, but if I'm not mistaken, Kito, I think that's only for Java champions. Is that correct?
Yes, you're right. Yep.
Yeah. So, okay, excellent.
Right. Whoops, that was loud. Okay, I just hit my watch against.
No, I didn't hear it from my end. I think you're good.
No. So I just randomly made. Okay, so. It
no,
really
there's probably loud for you, but that's all. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, so I think we've come to another episode, the end of another episode of the Stack Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and it's now time for Danno to take a nap.
Yeah, that's right.
But so thanks for listening, and we will see you next month. And you can find us, by the way, at stackpodcast.com. All right, goodbye.